Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here for this quick discussion as to this impending wintry storm system that we're all going to have to deal with. My name is Meteorologist Kai O'Mara here coming to you. It's shortly after 9 a.m. here today, and we'll be able to kind of walk you through what this system is going to be capable of and then also give you an opportunity here to even ask some questions if necessary. But we'll try and get through all the questions that we've seen earlier this morning and how this might affect your weather plans going forward the next couple of days. First off, be thankful we're in Iowa, even though it's going to be icy here. Farther up to the north, folks in Minneapolis and Sioux Falls are going to get absolutely smoked by this thing. So as we start off here this morning, you'll notice that we do have some scattered snow showing up on radar out here. None of this is touching the ground quite yet, so we don't expect this really in our area today. Most of the snowfall that's actually touching the ground is clear back up in here. So today is really characterized by an increase in scattered clouds from the west. Places like Decorah and Charles City may wind up getting some scattered snowfall in the area later on this afternoon, but it doesn't look like much here. Decorah through Charles City, will keep our eyes on you, but for the most part should not see much in the area for today. This is what happens then going into tonight. When it comes right down to these winter weather alerts that are in place, the winter storm watch runs from Dubuque to Manchester to Independence and points towards the north. This includes Fayette, Guttenberg, Prairie du Chien, Decorah back through Charles City. There's also a winter weather advisory that has been issued. All these go into effect, by the way, tomorrow, and that advisory goes from Waterloo, Cedar Falls back to the west towards Tama, Marshalltown. It includes Grundy Center, includes Parkersburg, as well as Hardin and Franklin counties. This is almost entirely, unfortunately, going to be in the form of ice impacts for us. It is not going to be the snow impacts that we've had the past couple of weeks with these systems. This one, unfortunately, looks like all ice. I'll explain why. Here's what we have going on. The way this low-pressure system is tracking, there's a layer of warm air several thousand feet up. That really makes a big difference. And what we're going to be really keeping our eyes on is there's going to be a stiff northeast wind tomorrow. That's going to keep pushing some of the cooler temperatures down near the ground towards our area out of southwest sections of Wisconsin. When this happens, the raindrops that then fall still stay in the form of rain, unfortunately, and they don't have time to transition over to sleet with that cold air layer in place. So as a result, you wind up getting rain to fall on a surface that is below freezing. A lot of folks ask, why don't we get snow during those cases? Well, that's the reason why, and that's why tomorrow's setup is so tricky with this. So here's Pinpoint Futurecast. This is this afternoon going through the early evening. Again, notice places like Decorah and Charles City still getting in on some snowfall there. It doesn't look like much today. This is mainly up in Minnesota where most of this happens. Then going into the evening and overnight hours, things are actually very quiet at that point. Early on tomorrow morning, we start to get in on some of this mixed precipitation here. I would say that probably about a sunrise start is pretty likely down here towards Interstate 80, Iowa City, Coralville through Oskaloosa and Washington there. Otherwise, farther up to the north towards Cedar Rapids, probably 7, 8 o'clock for a start. And then this will continue to overspread the area going into tomorrow. This looks like a combination of freezing rain and sleet coming into the region tomorrow and then even continuing into the afternoon. Meanwhile, up here, this is a heavy snow band that's trying to take shape here. So we'll watch for that potential as well towards the north. Meanwhile, farther down to the south, we continue on with some freezing rain. This is tomorrow afternoon, a freezing rain and sleet combination. While it's tough to tell maybe on your screen right now, you can see these arrows. Do you see those arrows flowing in from the north and east like that? That's what's going to keep our surface temperatures down 32 or below, generally in these areas. And so as a result, the ice accrual can continue throughout the afternoon and even into the early evening hours where things are still probably going to be pretty treacherous on the roads. Then the system pretty much winds up getting out of here by early on Thursday. There still is a risk of residual snow cover up towards the north, but otherwise, for the most part, the system is basically done on Thursday. The big ticket item that we are keeping our eyes on here is definitely on the ice potential. And so unfortunately, this does look like an ice event for our local area here. We've upgraded now to go to 1/10 to about 4/10 of an inch of ice. This is a possibility that we could go into an ice storm warning situation as well. And the way things are lined up, the axis of the best ice accumulation looks like it's going to come in probably two areas here between generally Cedar Rapids and Maquoketa, upwards to about Waterloo back through Prairie du Chien. That entire corridor could wind up getting the high end of the ice accrual, especially towards Dubuque and Manchester. So we want you to be aware of that. If we are managing to stay at just 1/10 of an inch, hopefully that can mitigate some of the tree damage and some of the power outages that could occur. If it goes to the higher end, then yes, the tree damage situation will be something we need to keep an eye on. Also, the power outage situation will be something you need to keep an eye on as well. So still want to stress that for our local area, this is really more so about ice accumulation and freezing rain potential versus heavy snow. Here is our snowfall forecast, and it's about as tight of banding that we can draw here. Generally about 4 to 8 towards Decorah, and then as you get farther down to the south, there's going to be some mixing going on here, but a trace to 1 is a possibility along and north of Highway 20, 1 to 4 towards Fayette, Prairie du Chien, and then higher towards Decorah. Again, we don't expect any snow out of this system at all down here towards Maquoketa, Cedar Rapids, towards Iowa City. None of these areas, even towards Dubuque, Manchester, Waterloo, I really wouldn't expect a whole lot of snow from this. The focus is definitely on the ice potential. So we go back to what you may have seen come across your TV9 First Alert mobile weather app. And we've got that winter storm watch that's out from Dubuque to Manchester back through Independence and points towards the north. Again, all this is being issued generally for the same system that comes through here tomorrow afternoon and into tomorrow night. It will probably start getting its act together early on in the morning hours. Another thing we do want to keep in mind here, for anybody doing any traveling, this storm system is going to be intense for places to our north, especially towards Minneapolis. So we're down here in Iowa, obviously. We expect the cutoff of decent snowfall to happen right about there or so. When you start getting to the north towards Minneapolis, that is a high-end winter storm warning up there in Minneapolis, and some blizzard warnings are starting to creep in there too. National Weather Service is going anywhere from 18 to 24 inches for the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, which would be in the top 5 for them all time for snowfall events. So the top one was actually Halloween of 1991. So if you're traveling to the north for any reason over the next 2 to 4 days even, this is going to be a case that we need to watch it carefully here, because they're going to start getting snow this afternoon and early evening towards Minneapolis, and then they'll get a small break, and otherwise it continues tomorrow and Thursday. So that part of the country, if you're needing to travel to the north for whatever reason, you're going to want to definitely call ahead or just reschedule entirely based on what's going on towards the north. I do want to go back over our local First Alert forecast once again, because we've still had some folks asking some questions here about timing, asking some questions about impacts, and so when it comes down to it, clouds will be increasing for today. We don't expect much of an impact at all for today. This in-depth discussion is really more about what we're going to be expecting in the coming days. So the winter storm watch is out. Dubuque points to the north and west. Winter weather advisory is out. It is a possibility this could go to an ice storm warning as well. So as we pick things up with Pinpoint Futurecast here going forward, we'll see it here at 3 this afternoon. Not a whole lot happening around eastern Iowa. There's a lot of clouds around, perhaps getting clipped by some of that snow towards Decorah and back to the Charles City area. You can kind of see that lined up right there, far northern fringe of our area, just getting clipped by some of that snow. Otherwise, there's a nice break in the activity for tonight. Tomorrow morning, we start to get some of that freezing rain and sleet to lift up into our region. I would plan on that to be around, and it just doesn't take much to cause issues on the area roads. Just a trace of ice will slicken things up in a really big way. So it is really all about the ice accumulations in this particular setup. You can see it's mainly rain down here towards Mount Pleasant, and then mainly some snow up here towards Decorah, and then everywhere in between has generally got mixed precipitation or sleet or freezing rain going on here with this system. It's a very messy storm system. We just want you to be aware of all the different impacts that can happen, which for us, the vast majority of us will have to deal with some icing. So what you're seeing right here is a high-resolution output of where we feel the icing will be the greatest in this particular case. There is an axis here that is definable by what we have in the data right here that runs from Tama to Cedar Rapids, north through Manchester and towards Dubuque, and then out probably south of Madison, Wisconsin, maybe towards Milwaukee. That seems to be the axis at this update. Granted, it's 24 hours out as to where things are. At this point, it doesn't seem like a south shift is likely, but it's not impossible. If it's going to wiggle around more from here, it could go even farther to the north, but you can see that Cedar Rapids right there in the ice accumulation contouring. We're also seeing Iowa City right there with the potential for some ice. Dubuque is probably going to be one of the leaders on this, because even if it shifts north an entire row of counties, you're still in the bullseye towards Dubuque, and same story towards Manchester. So our northeast zone, we want to keep a very close eye on you folks as well. Same story towards Cedar Rapids west through Tama. And again, because ice is so dangerous, we've got it all the way down to the Iowa City yet, even with that general potential going on. We've got a couple additional questions coming in. Let me get these answered for you. Could this be potentially what we saw back in '07 with that system? Thankfully, no. It doesn't look like it's that much ice in this case. And the only reason is because it's only here for a brief time comparatively to what that system was. It's a great question, though. You bring me back to actually my first day on the job. That was my very first day at Channel 9 when we had the all-time largest ice storm in eastern Iowa in the state of Iowa history. No, it doesn't look like it's to that level. However, it's going to be substantial with probably 1/10 to 4/10 of an inch at least with isolated higher amounts. If we get to a 1/2 inch of ice in places, then that power line and tree damage stuff is really going to be something that we need to know about. What's the gut say about delays and cancellations on Wednesday? I would say historically, school districts don't like to mess with ice, and I think we'll leave it there, and we'll let the superintendents make their call. But given how things are looking right now, I'll run through the timing one more time on this. Given the way that ice tends to behave here, I would say that most school districts probably won't chance it. So we'll just have to wait in the morning and see what all the superintendents decide here around the region. But here's the general overview. When we're quiet tonight, we eventually wake up tomorrow morning, we're probably going to start seeing some rain bands begin to develop. And one thing that's interesting about this is actually a warm front that causes this. I'm going to take this back about 2 or 3 hours. It's a possibility you're going to get up tomorrow morning at 5, you're going to look at radar and you're going to say, I don't see anything. This storm must not be a thing. I don't see anything, because this is what the same thing happened last Thursday, where there was nothing going on at 5, and all of a sudden it exploded over the area. So that could be another thing. Watch how it develops here between 5 and say about 8 a.m. Starts to really widen itself out a little bit, and this is pretty classic of a low pressure system of this kind. So it comes up, it starts up, now it starts affecting our day into the early to mid-morning hours. That's why I think a lot of schools, they'll probably make a call one way or the other, if not late tonight or early tomorrow, depending on what superintendents want to do. But then as we look ahead here to the midday hours, we still have some snow going to the north, still have some icing going on in central sections. And the problem is that the temperatures don't really warm much from here. They'll stay right around 32 most of the afternoon and into the early evening hours, so the chances of getting much of a melt-off doesn't really happen with this system. Kind of like we've seen the last couple where we start to see it compact and melt a little bit. We're just not really going to see that, unfortunately, with this one. So it could be icy for a while here tomorrow, and even some lingering icing concerns on Thursday morning, not from additional falling ice, but from residual slick spots on roads and driveways and sidewalks and so on and so forth. Here's the main ice accumulation. I'll leave you with this graphic because I think this is the big take-home message as to who winds up getting what. If you draw a line from, let's say, Interstate 80, Iowa City area, all the way up to about Charles City and Prairie du Chien. That's pretty much our corridor of ice right there. We cannot rule out a few blips down here south of Iowa City either, but it doesn't look like it's quite in line to be too icy south of there. It's possible, but right now it looks like that main corridor is going to line up Cedar Rapids, Dubuque, Manchester, Tama, and points to the north and west. Iowa City, you're walking that line. You could still get some icy situations there in the early to mid-morning hours. That is our latest update here. Answered those 2 questions that did come in, and I appreciate you folks interacting with us here today. Obviously, things are going to shift a little bit between now and the onset of the system, but that just kind of gives you a walkthrough of what to expect. Today is very quiet. Tonight is very quiet. I'd say start looking for the freezing rain and sleet after 7 or 8 a.m. on Wednesday morning, and for the most part, I think from there, things are just going to slicken up. Last time we had measurable ice, by the way, in Cedar Rapids. I know we had that drizzle event a while ago. That wasn't necessarily deemed as measurable, and even just a non-measurable event caused all sorts of problems on the area roads. Last time we had measurable ice was back in 2021, January 30th of 2021. And I think that was the night that one of our old reporters, Mike O'Brien and Brian Tabak, were out there during their live shot, and they were actually able to scoot a hockey puck along the sidewalk. There was enough ice and enough to slicken it up. So just 1/10 of an inch causes problems. If we get above 1/4 of an inch, then we're really starting to talk about some substantial issues. And that is in the table. That's in the cards for some of us. So I want to leave you with this image before we go. We'll have latest updates for you as this system continues to evolve. Meteorologist Jan Reichert is in for midday today. She'll be on live with you at 11 a.m. And we've also got meteorologist Joe Winters, who will be anchoring tonight, 4, 5, 6, and 10, for some of the latest information here on this particular system. There is also a possibility that the watch could be transitioned to a warning towards Dubuque. That is something we're also mindful of, and that advisory could shift farther south over time, depending on how everything really kind of tracks out here. So we appreciate everybody being with us. Thank you for trusting us with your first alert of weather information. We appreciate you sticking around.